Okay, nobody's here. Welcome. We are going to wait like a couple minutes until everybody is here in the room to start, okay? Thank you for your patience and thank you so much for being on time. Meanwhile, I'm going to put in the chat the presentation for today. So you can just download, put it on the computer, and you can just follow our presenter. Again, thank you for joining us. We are going to wait a couple minutes to make sure that everybody's here, and we're going to start. Oh, hi, Gloria. Thank you for being on time. That's great. Okay. You're welcome, Lori. That's great. Hi, Deidre in Jakarta. Dulce Madrigal Lake County Housing Authority. Hello, Irma. Okay, we're gonna 1 minute and we're gonna start. Hello. Hi, Jenny. I know all of the names here because you are amazing housing counselors and you just coming to all our training. So this is great. Oh, Shelly, hello, NHS of Chicago, great. Minji, Beatriz, no, Jerry, this is awesome. Okay. Let's, yeah, okay. Chicago, I see here a lot of people from Chicago. Oh, Eunodis, New Orleans. Danny, welcome to Housing Action Illinois. I hope this one hasn't been your first training with Housing Action Illinois. We are here in Chicago, based in Chicago, but you can learn something from this webinar. I'm sure of that. Okay, let's start it. Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Cristino. I know that most of you know me already. We have been working in the virtual world for several years now. I'm so happy and excited that you are. This is the training that we had 5 years ago. So now we need to refresh and know about the anti-predatory lending database. And we have an excellent presenter today who is Carrie Bayer. Hi, Carrie. She is the director of Anti-Predatory Lending Database and Investigations at the Division of Banking for the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. So Carrie also supervised the Consumer Complaints Unit. Previously, Carrie was a senior attorney in the Consumer Practice Group at Legal Aid Chicago. You know that we have a lot of trainings with Legal Aid Chicago. And she is she was a staff law clerk at the United States Bankruptcy Court of the Northern District of Illinois. So we have an excellent presenter today. She's the director of the Anti-Predatory Lending Database. So we don't need to ask for any more. She's going to drive us about the Illinois anti-predatory lending database, what we need to do, what we need to understand. And I'm telling you, I know that we have people here from Florida, California, Indiana, Georgia, Louisiana. Welcome, everyone. Even this is in Illinois only. You might have another in your state, some type of database similar like this. If not, you need to advocate for one. And the best option is just check with your legal aid agency in your state. But anyhow, you are going to learn and get some tips about what is the loan that could be considered predatory. So I'm not the expert. Let's just give it give it a lot of emojis, guys, and take in welcoming Carrie Bayer, okay? I want to see all the emojis. I just want to see it. Thank you. Yeah, everybody's just doing it. This is great. So Carrie, you can just share your screen. And also, while Carrie is sharing the screen, I just want to let you know this training is recorded. We usually do it for report purposes, but I'm going to put it on our website so you can just get a refreshment about what is this training. And Migdalia, don't worry that I'm going to put again the link for the presentation today, so you can have it right now. Okay, Carrie, all of yours. Asking questions, please. Asking questions. If you see something that you need to ask questions, ask for clarification. This is the opportunity to learn from the experts, okay? I see enough of you. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Vivian, and thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and learn a little bit about the anti-predatory lending database. If you don't know about it already, I know that I think I've spoken with a few of you, and I know for neighborhood housing, we did a presentation not too long ago together. So we're very excited to be here. We really appreciate the opportunity. This program does, works because of all the work that housing counselors do to support it. So we want to thank you and encourage your participation, and thank you for your past participation, and we are so happy to be here. So thank you so much. Because I know there are some people who aren't from Illinois joining us too. I was going to talk a little bit at the beginning, just a little bit of an introduction about the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, which I will refer to as IDFPR because it takes way too long to say the full name. And I think that, it might be helpful because there's a similar agency in every state. And so I will talk a little bit about what we do generally first, so that you know that if you're not in Illinois, then there's probably a very similar agency in your state that will do some of the same sorts of things that we do. Maybe not the anti-predatory lending database specifically, but with a complaint process and things like that. So that's a little bit of what I want to talk about at the beginning before we dig a little deeper into the APLD. But please do ask a question, interrupt with questions, chat a question as we're going along. I think it helps everybody understand when people ask questions and makes it more interesting. So please ask away. So at IDFPR, our mission is to protect the residents of Illinois, ensure the safety and soundness of financial institutions, to ensure that competent professionals are licensed to provide services to the public, and to enhance commerce in the state for the benefit of all of its residents. So the licensing part is, one of the most important things that we do within the Division of Banking. And so I'll talk a little bit about what types of individuals and entities we license, how to search for a company or an individual to see if they are licensed by us, and then a little bit about our complaint process so that if you or one of your clients is running into a problem with the company that we license, you may be able to take advantage of the complaint process to help you work with that company. So we license state banks, trust companies, pawnbrokers, mortgage banks, mortgage servicers, mortgage brokers, mortgage loan originators. So when you're working with borrowers who are either trying to take out a loan, refinancing a loan, or maybe they're working through a hardship with a loan modification or something like that, there's a good chance they may be working with, and you may be working with one of the companies that we license. So we certainly want to know, your perspective, how they're doing. If you're running into problems with them, we would like to know about it. So one way, and you can always reach out to me anytime if you feel like there's an issue you want to bring to our attention and you're not sure if we license the company that's involved, but that I do have a link here to the place where you could search online and see a list of, you could search by name and see if it's a company that we license, if it's under banking or mortgages, different things. You can type in the name of the company and then it'll show you if we license that company. So for people who are outside of Illinois and within Illinois as well, all of the information is on this website, nmlsconsumeraccess.org. And this is really helpful because you can type in the name of a company and it will give you a list of all the states that company is licensed to do business in. And one thing I like about it is it also gives you the contact information of what agency has their license, and they might have a complaint process associated with any issues you're having with that company. It'll give you a phone number or email address somewhere you can reach out within that exact agency in that state. So, we're called IDFPR, but some states are called banking department, or some states are called consumer protection. There's all different names in all different states. So this is a really easy way to figure out, what is the company license in your state? What is the agency that they have a license with, where you can make a complaint or let them know about an issue that you're having. And then just to talk a little bit about our consumer complaint process, we accept complaints against the companies or individuals that that have a license to do business in the state of Illinois. We would contact, when we receive a consumer complaint, we contact that individual or the company and we ask them to respond to the complaint. Just to be aware, depending on what the circumstances, we can't act as a lawyer, we can't give legal advice or become involved in a complaint if there's already an issue that's in litigation. But could be a useful process if someone is just having trouble getting information, getting in touch with someone that can work with them. If they have an issue that they can't resolve, to bring it to our attention, and through the complaint process that's available. And we want people to know that they are willing to, we're willing to help them through that. And for housing counselors as well, if you're seeing a problem with a mortgage servicer or someone you're trying to get information from, please let us know that. We would like to know that as well. So it doesn't have to come from the consumer, but it can. Just a little bit about our complaint process here. So we receive the complaint. Then we receive a response from the respondent or the company that is licensed with our agency for Illinois. And then if once the licensed company responds to the complaint, they may be able to resolve it with the consumer. The issue may be finished. But if there's not a resolution, that the consumer doesn't feel like they've reached a resolution or gotten the information they needed, or whatever the case may be, we would then look into whether there was some evidence of there's a violation of the licensing act that we have here in Illinois, or the rules that we have that accompany that. And if we think there may be a violation, then we can investigate it further. So that's sort of just a little bit of overview of the complaint process. And again, every state that has licensing for mortgages would have a similar process with companies that have licenses. So I hope that can be helpful to everybody.
Carrie, I have a question. Does the database have a wildcard search? A wildcard search, so you can just check everything?
Does the database have what kind of search?
Wildcard, like a wildcard search. It's in the Q&A.
Yeah. Let me check and see. No, you can't search the database. So the information that is submitted to the database is private.
Oh.
And it's not searchable. But twice a year we do a report that gives kind of an overview of some of the information that's in the database, like how many loan applications we've received information about, how many different companies are entering information, that sort of thing, what sort of terms that companies are putting in that they're offering to consumers. And I could explain a little bit about the terms that we're tracking in the APLD when we get to that section. But as far as information that the public can see, or even as housing counselors, when you're registered with the database, you can't just search for information or search for loans. You can only look at the loan that you're working on.
Okay, thank you. And the IDFPR license search requires an industry input.
Does the license search require an industry input?
Yes. Jeffrey, if you want to talk, we can just unmute your microphone, so you can just ask your question alive. Jeffrey, you can talk if you want.
Okay, thank you. When you were speaking about the Illinois licensing lookup, the financial professional lookup, you mentioned that you can just put in a name and search. But what I've tried to do is that certain entities, I may not be correct. I want to see if they're a real estate company, but I want to see if they're in another industry as well to see what other related licenses. That's what I meant by a wild card search. Because I see that if I try to do just the company to see what they're licensed in terms of the different types of licenses, it requires you to put in either a real estate or some other type of industry in there.
Yeah, so the link I have on this page will only show if you don't pick you could see where it says license type. Right. If you don't pick a license type, it'll search all the types that are in this list. But you're right. So some we license at IDFPR many different, we license like I mean all kinds of different professionals, doctors, nurses, that sort of thing. So there are some different search functions that we have within our website. So this one is only going to search the kinds of companies that are on this list. So if you want to search for real estate agents, which is another company again that's licensed in Illinois by IDFPR, then that might be a different search link than the one that I gave you. So
yeah, I'll check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I have another question. Do you do TILA violations or TILA violations?
If you'd like to report a TILA violation to us, yes, we would like to hear about that, because yes, the companies that have licenses from Illinois, they have to follow the licensing laws, but it also requires them to follow many other lending laws that apply, like Truth in Lending Act. So yes, please let us know about that.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Janine, you can do it. Thank you. Okay, no more questions. I don't have, let me see. Yes, I have another question. What about out-of-state home inspectors?
Ooh, home inspectors. You said out of state or?
Out of state.
It may depend on the state, but if you do the license search on the IDFPR website, those are companies that are licensed to do business in Illinois. So depending on the license type, and I don't know about home inspectors specifically, they may have to be licensed to do business here, even if they're not located here. So a lot of mortgage banking companies can be located in Arizona, but if they're trying to do work with borrowers who live in Illinois to do loans with them, then they need to be licensed in Illinois to do that. So it may depend on the industry that you're looking at.
Thank you. Remember, if you want to talk, just raise your hand, and when we use the time, so I unmute your microphone. Thank you, Carrie. So we good. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. And I'll just get back to where we were here. So now I was going to turn to the Anti-Predatory Lending Database, APLD, and this is, if for anyone out of state, this is Illinois-specific loan, or Illinois-specific law that applies to companies that have licenses to do mortgage banking in Illinois, as well as individual loan officers that are licensed to do mortgages in Illinois. This law applies to them, and it is specific to Illinois and even to certain areas, which we'll talk about as we go through. but I hope that maybe it can help give you a general sense of, you know, some of the things we're looking at with the anti-predatory lending features. And I'm happy to provide more information if that would be helpful to anyone as we're going along. So I'm going to go a little bit over the general provisions of the law. And then we'll talk about specifically housing counseling, how the housing counseling part of it works. And then I also have some other information that we have about the housing counseling part of the APLD that comes from our frequently asked questions and things like that. So the anti-predatory lending database comes from a law called the Residential Real Property Disclosure Act. So this information is just meant to be sort of general information about what is contained in that act, but it's not an interpretation of the act. So the law always controls over anything I'm saying. There is a link to the law at the end of the presentation where you can go there and you can read it if you have some questions. Again, always don't hesitate to reach out to us. I have contact information at the end of the presentation as well. So the purpose of the anti-predatory lending database is to assist borrowers in understanding the terms of the loans that they're offered in order to reduce predatory lending practices and ultimately reduce the number of foreclosures. So the anti-predatory lending database comes into play sort of right at the beginning of the loan process. If a borrower is offered a loan from a company that's licensed to do mortgage banking in Illinois, and this loan has certain types of features, then the borrower will have to go and have housing counseling before closing on the loan. And the purpose of that is to make sure that the borrower understands that this loan has some non-traditional or, you know, possibly predatory features, and that the borrower understands how that's going to work with the loan, and they're sure that they want to go forward with the loan, given that it has those features. So that's sort of the overview idea of how the APLD is intended to work. We also collect information about loans that are being offered and, you know, kind of these non-traditional or potentially predatory terms that might be offered. And as I said, twice a year, we publish a little report that you could read about if you want to find out how many loans are seeing that have interest only or different terms or different things. We have all that in our report, but there is no information publicly available outside of what's in that report. And then we also use the data that is in the APLD sometimes to assist with other types of investigations. So if we've received a complaint about a company or something that we've determined needs to be investigated, we may turn to some of the data that we have in APLD to assist us in that process to find out what sort of loans the company's been offering to consumers. So the APLD only applies to certain types of properties. First of all, the property has to be between 1 and 4 units, and it has to be owner occupied. So the owner has to live in the property. So in order for these, you know, requirements that we're talking about with the housing counseling and tracking various terms and all of that, is only going to apply if the property is, again, something the owner lives in the property and it's 1 to 4 units. So there are exceptions to APLD for the other types of properties. So if it's not owner occupied, someone has a rental home, they rent out a rental apartment building, that doesn't apply. APLD is not going to apply to that. Commercial property as well, where businesses are located, as well as government owned property. And what that means is that places where government functions take place, like the Daily Center in Chicago, for example, would be a government owned property. Again, APLD doesn't apply to that. So it's going to apply to places where the owner lives in the property and it's less than 4 units. The APLD also applies in 4 counties in Illinois. So this is something else. I know if you're from a different county that's not one of these 4 counties, that's something to just have in mind too, that the APLD at this time does not apply in those counties. Starting in 2008, the APLD started in Cook County. And in 2010, it was expanded to Kane, Peoria, and Will County. And that's where the program applies. So mortgage banking companies who have licenses to do business in Illinois, they every time they have received a loan application from a borrower in one of these 4 counties, they have to go to APLD and enter data when it's an owner occupied, the person lives there, and it's 1 to 4 units. So those are the types of loans that we're collecting information about in APLD. And this is one thing I wanted to explain up front, because I think it's really important. The way that the APLD is sort of enforced, if you will, is that in the 4 counties where the APLD exists, every mortgage that is recorded with the Recorder of Deeds office must have either a certificate of compliance or a certificate of exemption attached to it when it's presented to be recorded, when it's brought to the county recorder's office. So that tells the county that they've complied with the APLD program, or they're exempt from the program. And every time a mortgage is recorded in these 4 counties, one of these certificates has to be presented with the mortgage, given with the mortgage for it to be recorded. So as we'll get into, the housing counseling is a process that's required to get the compliance certificate and record the mortgage in certain situations. So that's something I wanted to let you know ahead of time. I think someone raised their hand. Do you want to ask a question?
You can talk now, Janine. Janine, you can talk. Yes.
I'm sorry, something popped up on my screen, so I hesitated. Okay, yes. So I don't know what a certificate of compliance or a certificate of exemption is. I just wanted you to explain those.
Sure. So it is a certificate that is that it basically is something that comes out of the database, like it's generated within the database, and at the closing, and we're going to kind of walk through the process. So if I hope it's not confusing to talk about this now, but when the loan is closed, so when the closing happens, the title company that closes the loan would actually create the certificate saying this loan has been compliant with the process. And that's for every mortgage that is going to be filed in any of the four counties, Cook, Kane, Will, or Peoria. So the certificate itself is something that they have to print out from the database.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey, you can talk too.
Thank you. You mentioned that the client, if they're flagged in the database, they will need to housing counseling. Now, I guess my curiosity is that's not necessarily traditional full-blown housing counseling for debt to income ratios and all that, but more housing counseling in terms of the database, whereas the loan information the client received, it matches what's in the database and auditing those things. Is that a correct assumption?
That is true. So part of it is like the housing counselor confirming some of the information that the loan officer entered into the database, but there's additional questions as well. That's the APLD program asks of housing counselors, like, did the borrower understand? They're more general, the general sense of how the borrower's understanding of the loan. Do they understand it? Can they afford it? Those sorts of questions. And I have all the questions in a slide, so I'll go over those each individually so you can understand. But yes, part of it is looking at the information that the APLD has, received from the broker or originator, whoever they're working with, and comparing it to the information that the borrower has or received or understands, what the borrower's understanding of what they're being offered. But then also some more general, I guess, information about the housing counselor's opinion of whether the borrower can afford the loan and they understand it and that sort of thing.
So it would be a HUD compliant counseling in addition to the database auditing of what's entered into the system. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure what HUD compliant meeting is, but I'll go over all the questions that the database is, prompts housing counselors to answer and what information it asks them to collect, so that you have a sense, if you're doing an interview, what you'll need to do inside the APLD.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Mhm.
you're gonna have like a housing counseling session, and it's going to, Kate is going to tell us what we do when we have these, compliance, but what is this step to get the certification and also what happens. You will see in a minute. But but before that, I have another question, and it's regarding the certificate of exception. It's like I experienced this year as a requirement, though a state agency granted money to homeowners to get their home repaired. So that's why when the state agency gave the money to the homeowners to repair the home, they had to get a certification of exception.
If they are giving homeowners money to repair the home and it is part of that transaction, what we see sometimes is that they're requiring the homeowner to sign a mortgage. And the mortgage may say that they have to live at the property a certain amount of time, or if they sell it, they have to pay it back, or that sort of thing. So if the transaction involves a mortgage, then it would need one of the two certificates. So that could be a certificate of compliance, or it could be a certificate of exemption, depending on the situation.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yes.
Sure. So just to talk a little bit generally about how the APLD works. So an individual borrower is applying for a mortgage loan with a broker originator who is licensed by the state of Illinois to do business. So there are exceptions. Some of the, if you're working with a bank that is federally chartered, then they are probably not licensed to do mortgages in Illinois because they don't need to be. So then the APLD doesn't apply to them. So it applies to companies that are licensed to do mortgages in the state of Illinois, and those would be the companies also that you would show up on our list if you were to search through, the search functions on our website. So there are mortgage banks offering mortgages, or loan officers that work for different companies that might not be required to be licensed. It just depends on the situation. But if they are required to be licensed, then they have to do the APLD. So once the loan officer, the broker, takes a loan application from a borrower, then they have 10 business days to go into APLD, and they give information about what terms they're offering. So the loan amount, the interest rate, whether it's fixed or adjustable, that sort of thing. After they've made an offer, once they've received an application, they've sent a loan estimate out to the borrower. They have to go in and put those terms in the APLD. Then the APLD will sort of, again, be screening out, like if it's property that is rental property, or property that is a commercial property where a business is being run, those don't need to be entered in APLD. But if the property is somewhere that the borrower lives and it's less than 4 units, then it's going to prompt the broker, the loan originator, to enter all this information about the loan. Then the IDFPR determines, again through the APLD, whether the loan needs housing counseling or not. So depending on the terms that the borrower is being offered, as those are entered into the database, it'll come out at the end with, this loan needs counseling, or this doesn't need counseling, it can proceed to closing. So for the housing counseling is required, then it'll alert the broker, the originator that's entering that information. It will alert them right away, this loan requires housing counseling. It'll also send a letter to the borrower saying to the borrower, you have to, based on the terms that you're offered in your loan, you have to have housing counseling. Now, the way the APLD is supposed to work is, once there's a notice that the borrower needs housing counseling, the company that's working with them to get the loan is supposed to stop right there. The law says they cannot take any legally binding action on the loan transaction until either there's a new recommendation that the borrower does not need counseling. So if they've changed the terms of the loan and that they don't need counseling anymore, they can go in and make an update in APLD. And then, you know, the APLD will determine, do you need counseling or not? If the terms have changed, you don't need counseling, then they're okay. Or if they do have to have counseling, then the counseling session has to occur before anything else happens within the loan transaction. That's what the law says. So there are certain types of borrowers and certain types of loans that will require housing counseling. So borrowers who are either all first-time home buyers or they're refinancing could potentially be required to do housing counseling. So those are the two groups of people that are, you know, possibly eligible for housing counseling. Then they'll only, you know, the housing counseling requirement only comes into play when one of these 5 terms that I have listed here are present in the loan. So if the loan permits interest-only payments, that would require housing counseling. If the loan may result in negative amortization, if the total of the points and fees payable by the borrower at or before closing is more than 5% of the loan amount, if the loan has a prepayment penalty, or if the loan is an adjustable rate mortgage, and that is defined specifically, adjustable rate is defined specifically as the rate will adjust within the first 3 years of the loan. So if it's a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage, if it's the interest is, you know, set for 5 years before it adjusts, that does not require housing counseling if it's less than 3 years. So before I go on, is there any question about these terms or what these terms mean? But any one of these being present would require housing counseling if the borrowers are first-time home buyers or they're refinancing the home that they live in.
Do you have any questions? Remember, you can raise your hand and talk, or it is clear. So just give us a nice emoji that you got it. But I recommend that if your agency is in Peoria, Will, Kane, or Cook County, you should get an account. You never know what happened or, you know, what type of client is going to need the services. So it's better that you are prepared. Okay. I have a, Lori. Lori wants to talk. Lori, you can unmute yourself now.
To know if the borrower for 0.3 under the and if they elected to pay more than 5%, would they still need the counseling?
If the borrower elected to pay more than 5% of their points and fees, you're saying?
Yeah, at closing, like if they wanted, you know, to pay more money up front than what was required, would they still need to go through the counseling?
Yes, if the money that they're paying meets the definition of points and fees, and the definition is basically tracks what's in a law called the Illinois High Risk Home Loan Act. So that does walk through the calculation. So it may depend on what they're paying up front, you know, whether it meets the definition of a point or fee. So it's hard. I don't know for sure unless I know what they're paying up front. So it's possible that they may have to do the counseling in that situation.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. Okay. So Maria, so everybody good? I think we're good.
All right. So any borrower that's coming to you for the APLD housing counseling will kind of will have met one of these, you know, one of these things. They'll either be a first-time home buyer or they're refinancing the home they live in, and then they'll have at least one of those terms being offered to them. So they're being offered interest only, they're being offered adjustable, that sort of thing. That's what you should see for an APLD counseling session. So as I mentioned, if you know the loan officer puts in information and it shows that the borrower has to get counseling, the department sends a letter to the borrower informing them of the requirement, and the loan officer also, you know, gets a notice that that is required. Then there's sort of a time process from there. So the borrower has 10 business days to schedule an interview with a HUD-approved counselor. The borrower has to supply all the documents that the counselor needs at least 72 hours before the interview. And then after the interview is conducted, the counselor has 7 business days to log into the APLD and enter information about the counseling session. And we'll go over the details of what information you'll be asked to enter. So the counseling session itself, we have kind of some information and frequently asked questions. The average session may last 1 to 2 hours. The purpose of the session is to reduce predatory lending practices by assisting the borrower in understanding the terms and conditions of the loan for which he has applied. So it's basically counseling the borrower through, you know, an understanding of what the loan is, how it will work maybe at the beginning, if it's going to change somewhere down the line, how it will work down the line, if it's going to have a balloon payment, you know, making sure they understand all of those different things and all those features that may be different from kind of the traditional 30-year fixed mortgage that a lot of people are familiar with. Finally, the counseling sessions should be sufficiently in-depth with the borrowers to answer the questions that are posed by APLD, and we'll go over those questions in a minute. I think I see a hand. Go ahead if you'd like to talk.
No, you lower the hand now. So if you want to talk, just raise your hand and so you can unmute your microphone. Okay, Jakarta, you can talk now.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
Sure.
Hi. I was
Hi.
wondering, since sufficiently in depth is highlighted in blue, so I'm wondering, is there like a guideline for what counts as sufficiently in depth?
Not really, outside of, you know, we'll go over the information that the APLD will ask you to enter, but I think we pretty much, my view is that you're the experts on housing counseling, so we leave that determination to you to decide, you know, what this borrower needs based on their situation. So no, there's no additional guidelines or, you know, specifics other than that.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I have another one. Jeffrey, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. You may have covered this because I had to go for a quick break, but if you didn't, I believe that the lenders have to pay a fee to get into, you know, to be a member of the APLD. And is that fee or charge that they pay, can that be passed on to the borrower? Or is there a requirement for that?
So there's no fee for them to use the APLD, but if there is, they're offering a loan that requires housing counseling, the law says that the loan, you know, the mortgage company, the loan officer, they would pay the fee to the housing counseling agency. And I have a slide where I'll talk about some details about that. But the borrower does not pay for the counseling session. The company offering the loan pays for the counseling session.
So there's no membership fee in the APLD at all.
Right. Mm-hmm. There's no
Okay.
fee for the company to access the APLD.
Interesting. Okay, I might talk to you later about that on the outside, offline. Okay.
Oh, please do.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeffrey. Okay.
So, so the information that the APLD will prompt you as a counselor to enter will be the following: all of the borrower's social security numbers. And the social security number is actually really important because that is how you find the borrower's record inside the APLD. As soon as you go in, you have to search by their social security number, and then you're able to pull up all the information that their mortgage company entered into APLD. So you have to have the social security number to be able to find their record and enter all the rest of this information. Their property information, so their address, is it a single family home, that sort of thing. Their demographic information, such as their income, expenses, their other types of debt, consumer debt generally. Information from the disclosures and notices that the borrower received about the loan. Any financing the borrower received in the last 12 months. So if they're refinancing a loan that they've taken out, you know, in the last 12 months, then it will ask about that. Terms of the loan that the borrower has applied for, including those terms that require this borrower to obtain housing counseling. So it'll ask, you know, is the loan interest only? Is the loan a negative amortization loan? Those sorts of questions. Again, like I think Mr. Davis said, it sort of asks you to confirm the information that the mortgage company's already entered about this loan, and tell us is what you see consistent with what they've entered. And then there's the counselor recommendations in APLD. And then this is where, you know, it's styled to yes or no questions, but you can also put notes in into this section. But basically, the APLD asks the counselor recommendation. Do you think that the loan should not be improved because not be approved because there's indicia of fraud? Do you think the loan should be approved and you don't see any problems with it? Can the borrower afford the loan, or can the borrower not afford the loan? Does the borrower understand the transaction? Does the borrower understand the costs associated with the transaction? So those are the types of questions that the APLD is looking for from the counselors, you know, views, thoughts, recommendations after meeting with the borrower, as far as where exactly the borrower is in this transaction, and what your views are of the interview with the borrower. Then the APLD further will ask a few more questions. Has the borrower's monthly income and expenses been reviewed and disclosed? So that's one thing. Is the rate of the loan above the market rate? How is it comparing to other loans that you're seeing, you know, people applying for, borrowers that might be kind of a similar situation? Do you think that the borrower should seek a competitive bid from another broker or originator? It's kind of it's asking for your opinion. Are there discrepancies between the borrower's verbal understanding of, you know, what they're being offered and the forms or the documents, the disclosures that they've gotten from the mortgage company? Finally, is the borrower precipitously close to not being able to afford the loan? So is it something that might put them in a position where they'll be struggling to make the payments? Does the borrower understand the true cost of debt consolidation, if that's a factor here, and the need for credit card discipline? Has the information that the borrower received from the mortgage company been changed at all or amended from when it was initially offered? Has there been changes made from the original offer that the borrower received from the mortgage company? And was the counseling session in person or by telephone? And then, like I said, there's kind of a general comments and notes section where if you'd like to make a note or a comment about something that you saw, something that concerns you, or if you don't have any concerns, you can note that there. That's kind of an optional area to note anything you want to know or anything you want to tell us about it. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about some other housing counseling provisions, but does anyone have any questions about things that the APLD will ask housing counseling counselors to enter after a session?
This is Jeff Davis again. I'm sorry for the myriad of questions.
You're welcome.
Is there any connection with the APLD and MERS?
And the APLD and what?
MERS, the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, that database.
Oh, okay. No, I would say, other than the fact that if, you know, sometimes a mortgage might be the lender, if you want to say that, on the mortgage might be MERS. It might say that that's who the lender is. But that mortgage would need to be recorded with the certificate, regardless of whether MERS is listed as the lender on the certificate. And basically, the controlling factor for APLD is who took the application from the borrower. What company was the borrower working with when they submitted the application? So sometimes, if that company has a license, then they have to submit information to APLD. So sometimes the borrower might work with the broker, you know, and that's the person that is taking the application, walking them through the whole process. Then at the end, they're taking out a loan from Bank of America or something, you know, a bank, or MERS, or, you know, whoever the ultimate lender is going to be. That doesn't matter so much for the purposes of APLD. What matters is who's the borrower working with through the process. Who are they submitting the application to? That company, if they have a license, has to submit to this program.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any connections, because the Mortgage Electronic Registration System is what is like a database of different lenders contributing to information on the loans and so forth. Okay, thank you. You've answered my question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody else has another question or comment? No, I think it's fine. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your questions too. Okay, Carrie.
Yep, keep them coming. I don't mind. Ask as many as you want. So as I believe Jeffrey mentioned, there is the law does say that the cost of housing counseling has to be paid by the broker or the originator, the mortgage company that the borrower is working with. So the housing counselor can charge their reasonable and customary costs up to $300 for the session. And that cannot be charged to the borrower, but it has to be charged to the company that offered the loan that required the counseling. Also, the law says that the counselor shouldn't, recommend that the borrower work with any specific mortgage company or financial institution to get a loan. So if the counselor thinks that the borrower should get, shop around a little bit, get an estimate or quote from some other mortgage companies, that is absolutely fine to say that. You just can't recommend that the borrower work with a specific company. And finally, the purpose of the housing counseling process within the APLD is not to prevent the borrower from proceeding with any loan that they want to proceed with. So if they decide they have the counseling session, you may have made a recommendation to them about whether they should go forward on this loan or not. It's ultimately their choice. The idea is that the requirement for housing counseling is to get the borrowers with information and the opportunity to understand, but then they ultimately are free to make their own decisions. So, just because the APLD said this loan requires counseling, that does not prevent the borrower from taking that loan out, going ahead at the closing, and proceeding on that loan. The idea is just that they're doing it with the understanding that they know what they're getting into. So that's the purpose, and it's not to prevent them. They're free to make their own choice, whether they want to go to closing and whether they want to shop around or whether they want to go to closing, whatever they want to do with this loan. So the website I have here is the Illinois ILAPLD.com is the Anti-Predatory Lending Database, and that's where you would actually go to log into the database and enter information. We do have on the homepage there, we have news updates, my contact information is there, my email, my phone number. We have frequently asked questions. And then when you log into that website, there are training materials. So, and I can do a little demonstration of this website after we take some questions if there are any, but when you're logged into the website, you can actually see there's a training section where you can see all the pages where you as a counselor would enter information. So you can see it all there. So the things I just went over about, these are all the questions APLD is going to ask you. You can see what those web pages look like when you're logged in and you view the training materials, so that that might be helpful if you want to make sure that you're gathering the right information from the borrower before an interview or at the time of the interview. It shows you everything that I just went over. It shows you what it looks like and how you have to enter it once you're logged in, but that information is only available after you've logged into the website. Article 3 of the Residential Real Property Disclosure Act is the law that I mentioned, the statute that governs APLD, and that's where all the provisions that I've just discussed came from there. And then there's also a link here to our general website where we have information about the complaint process that I talked about at the beginning, as well as APLD and all the other types of licenses that IDFPR offers to the state within the state of Illinois. So, Mr. Davis, you have a question?
Yes, and kind of a case study type of thing,
Yeah.
because I've audited, I've done some counseling on a file and ran into different situations. And I guess I'm wondering, are there any do's and don'ts for the actual lender? Because I've had where I've tried to secure the paperwork from the borrower or the customer, and they don't have it, so they yield to the lender to send the paperwork. And then later on, the borrower finds the paperwork and they're two different documents. So I've disciplined myself to make sure I get what the borrower received, not what the lender wants to send me. And a lot of times when I found out that they've initially exceeded the threshold where it flagged APLD, since the lender knows that I'm auditing because they were given the heads up by the client to send the application, they go in and amend their documents so where it comes under the threshold, and then look for an exception so that that the customer doesn't have to be audited then or counseled then.
Okay.
You follow me on that?
I think so. Like with the points and fees or something, they would reduce it after
they know that I'm involved in terms of going over the counseling, correct?
Okay.
And then they'd go and say, hey, the file's been changed. There's no more counseling necessary. But the whole idea is that their initial entries did require counseling, which flagged the file. So, I mean, are there any do's and don'ts for what the mortgage company should do? Or is there any safe guards against that? Because, you know, they may do it to another customer. And I mean, it just seemed kind of bizarre that it happened. First, it flagged and it was required, and then they find out that, you know, there's a counselor that sees that and tries to get the documentation from the customer, but the customer doesn't have it, so they refer to the lender. And lender says, "Oh, they're being, counseled, so let me bring it under the threshold so that the file now complies." But it's like they bring it just under the threshold, like 4.75% or something like that. So, you know, it's still kind of not a good thing because that customer could beat that rate. But, you know, do we continue on with the counseling? I mean, because then the file, I think, is locked up, or it had been locked up in my case before.
Yeah, so it is possible that, you know, the lender can change the terms that they're offering, and then they can go in APLD. In fact, quite frequently, probably with most of the loans that require housing counseling, the lender will decide to change the terms so that housing counseling isn't required anymore. And that is permissible as long as, you know, what they're actually closing on with, you know, if they're saying, well, we're only going to charge 4.97% fees instead of 5% fees, that I guess my opinion is that it better be true when the borrower gets to the closing, right? But if they are able to change, you know, to change their fees or to change the terms, and again, we're reviewing that, I guess, as they're making a change for the better. They're offering the borrower something better. So they could make that change as long as that is truly what they're offering the borrower. I mean, they have to be honest, and the law says they have to enter accurate and truthful information. So they can't just change it or manipulate it to avoid counseling. It has to be truly that they're changing what they're offering to the borrower.
Yeah, and I've had that on the loan, loan estimate, not when after it closed, but before it closes, you know, and I've had that happen. So I was just curious if there's any do's and don'ts on the lender side, and maybe that, you know, but that was a while ago. And because they can massage the figures, you know, the points, and then they can massage the loan origination fee because all that's bundled up in that section. And, you know, it could be that the discount points are okay, but their origination fees are way out of whack for what's the industry average. I don't know.
Right. And I guess if it's under the 5% threshold, then it won't require counseling. You know, it's sort of a bright line. So even if I agree with you, it might be more expensive than what a borrower could get somewhere else. They won't be required to do the counseling if it's 4.97. That's how, you know, the law sets that threshold at 5%. So that is unfortunately the case, because I think someone would benefit from counseling if they had a 4.97% points and fees, but it is a hard threshold. So.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey, there is another, Gina, you can talk now.
Yeah, so I guess my question was, well, I was unaware that a lender could even go in and manipulate the numbers, because from our standpoint as a counselor, once we go in and enter that information and we submit it, like, you can't even go back in and view that client anymore. So like there's, you know what I mean? We can't manipulate anything once we've submitted information. So is that accurate? A lender can actually go in there and manipulate numbers after they've already made a submission?
They can change the numbers, but again, they have to be changing the terms of the loan. But yes, up to the point of closing. Now, once there is a closing scheduled, then there's another step in APLD that the title company does, where they go in to the APLD file, if you want to call it that, and they actually close that file out. So at that point, once the title company's going to access the file, the lender can't make any changes to what they've put in APLD. There's also a time limit, just how long the information stays available. I think it's 90 days. So if a lender puts in, you know, the terms they're offering, and then they decide to change it more than 90 days later, they can no longer access that application anymore. But again, they have to change what they're offering the borrower. They can't just change what they put in APLD. So they have to actually make the borrower a new offer with different
Okay,
terms.
and then who verifies that that's actually taking place if the counseling is no longer required, so they wouldn't have to come back to us with updated documentation? Then where is the accountability in the fact that they are actually making a different offer and not just manipulating figures to bypass the counseling requirement?
So on the back end, when the title company gets to closing, they have to log into the APLD, and then they're asked some of the similar questions like the housing counselors asked. They will be asked, what are the points and fees on this loan? Is it interest only? Is it, you know?
Gotcha. So that's when the
So
certificate's issued, and what, or did they make the determination as to whether or not they can issue that final certificate for the recording of the mortgage documents? Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're supposed to look at the final closing disclosure that the borrower has and line up, you know, these are what terms are present, and they record those in APLD.
Gotcha. And then I have another question. This is probably maybe more for Vivian. How should we be reporting these? I don't know that we actually have like HUD. I don't think HUD recognizes these as something that we would report on as far as the anti-predatory lending counseling goes. So what do you suggest?
No, you just need to report the client is they coming for first time home buyer or refinance. So if they coming for
Okay.
first time home buyer is first time home buyer, and you just do this type of counseling, enter in the information. If you get paid the $300 or up to $300, the only thing is you cannot request reimbursement for that. So in the requisition form, you cannot put, you know, you cannot ask how paying for the for the counseling, but you can have the counseling reported in the 9902, of course.
So we're basically going to add it as just like an activity, but not a non-HUD funded activity. Yeah, we don't charge for any services here, so it would basically be free, and that's kind of what I was wondering. All right, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And this is very great questions. And Kerry is asking if the database is expecting more loans that require the counseling. And it could be, do points being charged lately?
Could you repeat that again? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Madeleine, you want to talk?
For me, Jeff Davis? Yes.
Okay.
The statement.
No, hold on, Jeffrey. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put Madeleine to ask that question, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute. Madeleine, go ahead. You can talk now. Madeleine? Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Carrie. This question, it's regarding the points. I mean, I'm just curious. I've done these applications, but it's been a while since I've actually gone into the anti-predatory lending database. But looking at what's happening lately in the past year, maybe with points increasing, is that why we're concerned right now more so because of the market? And are you expecting more of these loans to be required for counseling?
It's hard to say. I think it's possible. Yes, I think points and fees is a growing area where we're seeing that borrowers are requiring counseling more so than some of the other types of, you know, loans like negative amortization or, you know, that sort of thing. So I think it is possible because the costs seem to be rising going forward. We did have sort of an increase over the last like year and a half of, you know, loans requiring counseling. But then in the most recent, we just finished a 6-month report. It's actually down as far as how many loans are requiring to get counseling. So it was going up and up, and now it's down. So it's hard to anticipate, but I think points and fees is probably the area where we'll see more required counseling, just because of the costs seem to be increasing so much.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen that a lot lately. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. The CFPB put out a report about it, how they've noted that the costs are increasing each quarter, costs and fees. So.
Thank you, Madeleine. I have another question. It says like, when the lender or broker need to pay the $300?
Doesn't say specifically in the law anything about the timing as to when they need to pay it. But if you're having a problem with that, please let us know, because we would like to know about that.
Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey, go ahead. It's your time now.
Yes, and that the statement that was made addressed regarding reporting, that was one of the things I was curious about, because whenever housing counseling, the statement housing counseling is made, a counseling session, that's a full-blown session for, you know, financial analysis, you know, a client action plan and stuff like that, at least in my interpretation. So this here would be an additional or an addendum to that requirement for one-on-one counseling defined by HUD in my interpretation. I'm thinking, but you know, what I've been doing to kind of avoid the full blown, because even though the counseling session with the predatory lending database may be 1 or 2 hours, the background analysis and so forth with the actual client could be another additional 2 to 3 hours. But instead of, you know, pulling their bank statements and all that stuff, I just look at the RESPA. And that pretty much provides a lot of the information versus compiling, you know, waiting for documentation, individual documentation from the client. I mean, and I'm just making statements, not necessarily asking a question, but seeing if there's any feedback on that.
Do you mind, Carrie, that I talk about it? Okay, so Jerry and everybody, the counseling is required on the first time purchaser or refinance it at the primary resident. The thing is that if counseling is required, the borrower giving a list to the participant agencies to the client, telling, yeah, you need to go to one of those agencies, and the counselor needs to compare the information on the database with the loan documents and provide some recommendations. But regardless the recommendations that the counselor gives and say, oh, it could be predatory, or no, or it's higher, or you see some difference, is the borrower who decides if they want to proceed or not. And at that time, that's what it says, like the $300 needs to be paid. However, it's another counseling session. It doesn't mean like this is like it's like when you go in HECM. HECM requires different documentation. You don't need a work action plan, for instance. You just need the budget and see if the client is applicable, eligible, or whatever, and the client decides if they're going to move forward. Somebody came to your agency and say, I'm planning to buy this home, but the borrower told me that I need counseling. So you just enter in the database the information, and we are going to see a sample here how we're gonna do it, how the database works, and what are the information that they need to provide. And this is a counseling session about this situation. The situation is that one only. And you just put in your notes that you see the client because the borrower needed that information, and that's why you attend the client and you provide some recommendations or not.
Okay. And I thought I heard Carrie mention, though, you know, we would also, you know, talk to the client to see if they could afford it or not. And I guess that's what raised my, you know, and that requires, you know, analysis.
Yeah, you just make sure that with the budget and that you make sure that actually is correct, the information that the client has. And usually your clients are coming from your first-time homebuyer education or clients that you have in the past and they just buying a home and they know you. And I'm totally sure that the clients, when they receive the list of the housing counseling agencies, if they know you, they are going to go to you. And in that way, you can just, have that information with them. And it is somebody from another place just coming, you don't know, it's first time. So you do the whole, the counseling. And yeah, it's gonna take like a 1, 2, or 3 hours. Depends on, the information of the client. I have here Gina. Gina, you want to talk now? Yes.
Yeah, I was just actually going to make the comment that my experience has been with the requirement of who has to do the counseling. As most of the calls that I've received for the counseling that I've done on these are people that are refinancing or getting a HELOC or a line of credit, and they are pretty versed as far as like financial education and things like that go, and they're like frustrated by the process, or that this is a step in the process. They're not first time. I'm not getting the first time home buyers. So I don't know if that's even, a thing recently or whatever, but it's more so the other people that are refinancing and they really just want to get the, you know what I mean? They're just trying to get this loan. They don't know why they have to go through this process. And, they're just literally just frustrated with the fact that they have to now submit documentation to me to be reviewed, especially their personal information if I'm going over budget and asking, about affordability and some of the components that are required or would constitute a housing counseling appointment. And so, yeah, I was just touching on that. I'm wondering if anybody else has experience with working with anybody that actually is coming in as a first-time home buyer, because I'm not getting those people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm getting refis too.
Totally, this is up to the client. So the client, even the mortgage broker says you should see a housing counseling agency. It's up to the client if they want to pursue this road or not. But if they come in, this is what we wanted to have this training, because in that way you can see if you receive a client like that, what you need to do. Don't freak out. Just that you have you have an account in the Illinois Anti-Predatory Lending Database, and you just enter the information and you're working with that. And I have a question here. How do we register to become a participant at housing counseling agency in your database, Carrie?
Sure. So you can contact me here. So the next slide has my contact information. So here's my email and my phone number. You're welcome to contact me. But there is basically a form that you would fill out to apply to, to get access to the database. One person from the organization can just submit the form and become like an administrator of the APLD account. And then they can add counselors from there. So you really need one person to go through the registration process with us. And then that person would add any additional counselors that want to use the database.
Thank you. Do we have like a 10 minutes? Do you want to show us, it is possible to show us how the database of the web page, how it looks like? And
yeah, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute so I can log into.
Thank you. Great questions. I think there has been very, very good questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you all for your questions and for your comments too. I'm listening as you're, saying, well, that you've experienced certain things with different borrowers. It's really helpful for us to understand, what sort of things you're experiencing as you work on these APLD counseling sessions. So thank you for sharing.
Awesome. So I saw here, I think we never answered the question when the lender or broker need to pay the $300. We answered that question before?
So the law doesn't specify a certain time frame as far as when they need to pay it, but it's, if once the counseling sessions occurred, I think if there's some issue with having them pay it, I would encourage you to reach out to us and let us know about that, because we certainly want to make sure that they're meeting their obligations, but it doesn't give a specific time frame for them to pay within the law.
I have Danielle and Gina. Do you want to ask a question, Danielle?
I was actually just going to provide some feedback,
Sure.
just based on the previous statement I think Gina made, where She asks if any other agencies are receiving pre-purchase, more or less, a home buyer reaching out for this type of service. So at NHS, we're CDFI, so we are lenders. So we typically receive a referral from our lending department whenever this request comes up where one of our buyers will need to take predatory lending counseling. So we may receive a referral internally, but also externally. I updated the HUD website, our work plan, to specifically state that NHS provides anti-predatory lending counseling. So lenders will go to HUD website and look and see, locally who provides this type of counseling, and they'll call in to sign up their customer because, again, they can't close, they can't move forward without this particular service being delivered for their buyer. So that's another way that we typically receive a referral. Lenders just go out on HUD's website to find local lenders. But what I do, I make sure that during the time that we're delivering a counseling service, I'm preparing an invoice to send to the lender because most likely I have that lender's information, have the loan officer name and email address. So I'm preparing an invoice to send over to the lender. Because we do want to send them a certificate of completion, we update the database. So I'll send over an invoice to collect the fee along with the certificate of completion that I've created, or before the counselor is finalizing all the information that's required in the database. So that's another way to kind of, get that fee paid, hopefully. And if it's not paid, just to follow up with the lender saying, hey, this service was delivered. An invoice was submitted, you want to make sure you receive payment at closing or something, however that works with the lender.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, this is great.
Welcome.
And Gina, you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry. I still had I thought it said that I had my hand raised to still, and so I clicked it, and apparently that was not the case. My bad.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Well, thank you,
thank
Danielle,
you.
for sharing that too, because we have heard a lot of, sometimes borrowers or, lenders reach out to us saying, we want to get to a HUD approved counselor, but we don't know which one to go to. They do go, we send out a link to the website where they can search by zip code, or they can search all of Illinois. So thank you for adding that part on there. If you could, that's great, because we want to make sure, like you said, people can get to where they need to go. If they want to move forward on it, they're getting the information they need. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. So we've gotten calls from people saying, we want to get counseling, we just don't know where to go.
Yes,
So.
I think this is important, as you say, and I encourage you, if you are in Cook County, in Will County, in Kane County, or in Peoria, just comment and get one of the accounts. And also, yes, put it on your website that actually you provide these services. This is great. Thank you, Danielle and Kerry.
Great, and thank you all for so many questions and discussion. I really appreciate it. Do you have, Gina, you have another question?
Sorry. Sorry, you guys. One more thing. I just want to say this because it's one of the things that I always forget is if you don't log into that database every, 60 days, it will basically deem your account inactive, and then you have to go through the process of emailing to get your account reactivated. So I try to set a calendar reminder just to log in the event that I don't have somebody requesting that type of service that I'm required to log in, previous anyhow. So just best practice for anybody who's on the call. If you guys do get an account, make sure that you put a little note in your calendar to just log in at random so that way your account stays active.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is awesome, Gina. Thank you for that tip.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see, before you leave in, don't leave in yet, let's go and take a look for the guys that you don't have an account yet. Look how it looks, the website.
Yeah, so I've just logged into, we have like a sample website. It's a beta website. It looks just like the real thing, but it's not real. So you can kind of see a little demonstration of what it looks like. So this is what it looks like when the counselor logs into the APLD. So here is the training materials that I mentioned. If you click here, it'll walk you through in English and Spanish. It shows you the different screens where you enter information. So again, if you're doing an interview for the first time, you want to make sure I'm getting all information from the borrower that I'm going to need as I walk through the screens. I would say go to the training section, just look through it. It'll tell you, all the questions that you're going to be asked as you go through this session. So to get started, you're going to search for the application. I think I mentioned that you can search by either the social security number, the TIN number, if that's what they have, or if, you know, some other number that the lender has given them. So if you're not sure, make sure you touch base with the lender about what number you need to search for their application by. I just made a fake one for myself. So this is my, oh, it doesn't like what I entered already. Okay, so this is my loan that I'm getting out from a lender for my office at West Monroe Street. So right away, you'll see, you should see the borrower's name, their property address, and their loan amount. This status HC ready, that just means that it's waiting for the borrower to get housing counseling before the loan can move forward to closing. So you click on it there. It'll prompt you to make sure, is this the right borrower? Make sure this is the person that you want to access, because once you access it, you have, you know, you have access to their personal information. So just confirming that you have the right person there, and then that will walk you through it. So now over here on the left, it is showing you kind of all the, you're going to walk through each screen that's listed here on the left as you go through this. So you'll see where it says broker. This is information that the broker already entered about this borrower or about the loan. And then you're asked to enter the information as well and confirm, like, is it a single family home? Do you agree? You know, are the taxes 5,000? And you'll put that. If everything is the same, you can click same and it'll populate for you in the counselor fields. If you don't have access to the information for some reason, you can click no information available. When you submit it, this website is interesting, because when you submit it, it stays on this page. It says at the bottom, the data's been submitted. That means you have to go to the left-hand side and click on the next one. So you have to manually move through the process, just so you know. So counselor, you know, you can enter your name, your phone number, your office, all that information. That's just your own information. Oh, I do. Oh, the borrower's, yeah, you're going to re-enter the borrower's information here. So again, just confirming that the address is correct, that sort of thing. Oh, geez, it really doesn't like what I did. Okay. Then you'll move on to the gross monthly income. So you'll see the broker put their income down as 5,000. So you're going to confirm, is that correct? You put the income that you see from the records that you reviewed here on your end. And again, if it may be the same as, you know, what the count or what the broker put, if it's not, you just want to change it to whatever it is. So let's say stated income. The expenses, again, you're going to go over it, ask for both the present expenses and the proposed expenses. So it's basically a way to compare, if they're refinancing, for example, to compare the old mortgage to the new mortgage. If maybe they're moving to a new house, compare their old rent or their old mortgage payment to their new mortgage payment.
And I have a question here. So the information that the counselor entered is based on the document that the client presents, right?
Exactly.
And it's supposed to be like the broker put that information there. And if they have, the client has an information, it's just make sure that actually is the same.
Right. And if it's
That's
not the same, you should note it differently on yours. So if you talk to the borrower and they say, actually, my current mortgage is 1,100, then you would put 1,100 here. You don't have to match what the broker put in. We're asking you to, verify either from talking to the borrower, reviewing their documentation, you know, what is the appropriate answer to these questions. Mm-hmm.
And when it's not the same information, the brokers enter in the database, is when the problem arises, when you say something is wrong, why the client has a different number than the broker?
It could, I mean,
not necessarily.
It will store the information. And once you as the counselor have completed this, you know, section as far as with your information and your recommendations, then again, the loan can move forward if the borrower chooses to do that. But the information is in the database. So, you know, we can review the information that is entered by various parties between the broker, the counselor, and again, like the closing agent with the title company enters something too. So it's just
so
the
that one
data-
give you like a red flag to you. It's gonna give you like the red flag, like something is wrong there.
It's sort
Even
of
if the
depends on
client continue and client say, yeah, I don't mind, I'm gonna pay that. So I wanna have the home. So I don't care if I have to pay more. Okay.
Exactly. It's the client's choice, I guess, to move
Yes.
forward if they want to. But
Got it.
we keep all the data that's submitted through this process.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just gonna I'll click. So if you put same as broker, it'll match everything that's already in there. If you don't want to make it the same, you can change it, as you go along. So credit, the next thing it asks for is credit score. Again, you'll see what the broker entered. You can enter the same or different depending on what the borrower shows you. If you see, oh, it's actually 650, then you would enter 650 there. So again, once information, if it doesn't match, it will let you move forward. It just records it all. Loan information, first mortgage, yes or no. And again, this is where we're getting into sort of the meat of what is the terms of the loan that are being offered. So especially we, want to make sure if, the initial term, 360 payments, I mean, this is the note rate, all these things are really important. And then as we get to the bottom, these are the things the broker entered that required housing counseling. So the broker entered a note rate of 6.875, 360 months. And these are the things you just want to confirm from talking to the client or reviewing their paperwork. Is it a refinance? And then something down here that the broker shows will tell you. So this loan type is listed as adjustable. So, points and fees, 5.2% is what the broker put in. So this is one of the reasons why this loan required counseling. The points and fees are more than 5%. So you just want to confirm, do you see the points and fees the same as the broker? Do you think they're different? And you can answer theirs appropriately. Have they refinanced in the last 12 months? Yes or no? This is going back to the question, what is their previous history with this, refinancing or with this property? Is the loan interest only? Does the interest rates adjust within 3 years? Yes. So this is another reason why this loan required counseling. So there's two things, it's adjustable and its points and fees are more than 5. So you can see here what was the reason that the APLD required the counseling for this borrower, and then you can confirm it on the paperwork that the borrower gives you or by talking to them and understanding, what they have been told about the terms they're being offered. So once that has all been submitted, these ones that, as we're following down the left side, so there'll be a check mark to all the ones that you've submitted for, the information for. If it has just a V, like where it says broker originator, this is just a screen that you view. So you can see that the mortgage broker that this client is working with is Illinois State Broker. So it tells you their information there. You may already know, I know you said sometimes you're already getting the information from the broker, maybe the broker sent them to you, but if you don't know, or you're not sure, you can always check there and you should see who, you actually see the name of the loan officer and the company that they work with. Housing counselor, so you can assign it if you are their one person, if you're a supervisor within the APLD, you can assign a counselor to it, or you can assign yourself. And then whoever is listed as the counselor is the person that will see the information in APLD. So no one else, no other counselors, even within your agency, would see it unless they're supervisors or they're assigned to the loan. And then notices, so it'll ask, it asks the broker to list what they put in the loan estimate. So they put, the loan was for 100,000, the interest rate was 6.875. The monthly payment, $950. It's not a balloon, there's the APR, and then it's asking you to just review this information as the counselor so that you can see what the broker put in for their loan estimate. And then that's been reviewed. And then other notices, again, they'll say what dates they provided other notices. So if there was, I don't know what other kind of notices they might have sent, a change of circumstances or something that made a change in the loan term, they can put that notice in here, the dates that they provided the notices. So again, if you're looking with the client through their documentation, you can see, okay, that they're saying they provided the client notices on this day and this day. Again, this is just something you review for your information. You just marked as reviewed. And then I know we're running out of time here, but the recommendations here is kind of where the heart of those questions of what you think that the borrower, you know, how you assess the kind of, you know, important things about the transaction and the borrower's understanding. Can they afford it? Do you see anything that makes you think there's signs of fraud? Is the rate market rate? Is it higher than market rate? Should they shop around? What is your recommendation? What is kind of your overall thought about the loan? And then there's at the bottom here, places to put notes here. So once you've checked off all of these, then I'll just go through it so that you can see the final end of when you submit it. But if there's any other questions while I'm clicking, go ahead and you can ask me now because I know we're running short on time. So.
They're asking about the HECOM cases. I think so for the loan, it's an exception. Is to enter into the database. The applicable loans is purchase, is for mortgage for first-time home buyers and refinance, but no for HECOM, right? For home equity conversion, not.
That's right. Because reverse mortgages have their own counseling requirement, the APLD does not require counseling for reverse mortgages.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you have any other questions? Oh, I see here. Okay, and Jenny, come on, you can talk.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, totally.
Okay. This is just something that I found a little strange on the wording of this particular screen. And so my thought was this must be designed this way on purpose, but I don't really know. This is just something that bothers me a little bit. For example, the question, it's like maybe the fourth or fifth one down, the borrower does not understand the transaction. So you're going to put no. But for me, a simpler way to ask that would just be to say, the borrower understands the transaction. Yes. In other words, we're staying in the affirmative if, in fact, the borrower does understand the transaction. So I guess, and then the next question, the borrower does not understand the cost associated with the transaction. No. It would just be, I don't know if the questions have been designed this way, but I just felt like when I was doing this, I need to make sure I really fully read the question and that I really am answering it properly. And I have thought that it would be simpler if it says the borrower does understand, blah, 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 and you just click yes. Very straightforward. I almost feel like it's been designed to make it more difficult. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nobody else has this problem with me. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way. But I just guess I wanted to mention that and just maybe provide that feedback. Carrie.
I agree with you. I do not understand the use of the double negatives. It's very confusing. Thank you for that feedback. I agree with you 100%. You have to really read and reread the question before you can understand whether to answer yes or no. And I don't know the answer to why it was written that way. I'm not quite sure. Some of these may be pulled from the statute, you know, the law itself. I don't know, but I will look at that because, yeah, I certainly don't want it to be confusing. And of course, we're not going to get good answers if we're not asking good questions, right? So I understand that. Yes, it's not easy to read. So thank you for pointing that out. Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah.
No, so I'll just submit it. But if there's any other questions, go ahead. So this gives you the final submission page, and once you submit it, that's it, you're done. So it looks like you don't move off this page, but you're finished with the process. So that's just the sort of walkthrough. Is there anything else that anyone had thoughts, comments, or questions?
No, I think everything is fine. I don't see any other questions. I think this is very good and very helpful, and I'm so happy that actually a few of you guys already have the experience have been in the anti-predatory lending database. Please keep putting the information there when it's required. I think it's a great tip that you put in your website, that actually you just provide that type of services, or also like in the certification. So when when the borrower is looking for the HUD approval agency, they say, yeah, you provide that type of services, so they can send to the clients. And if you have the information of Kerry as well. Kerry, thank you very much, and thank you for being available for our counselors as well. If you guys hasn't been, you don't have the login information, you don't have an account with the anti-predatory lending database, please just join, go and apply and get an account. And if you have any other questions, Kerry is going to help you. Thank you so much, guys. I'm gonna put this information also in the recording in our website, so you can go back and you can revisit the information that Kerry presented today. And Kerry, thank you so very much. I hope we can just do it next year when we have a new housing counselors. We can just provide this information as well. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, look at you. You have all the applauses right now. Thank you so very much. Guys, thank you for joining us. Jeffrey, I know that you want to talk and you are allowed. Go ahead. Awesome. This is amazing. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, and I hope I can see you. Tuesday, we have another training about the powerful tools in financial. So check our website. More trainings are coming up. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Take care. I'm going to close right now the